Hello, everyone, and welcome to Osquery Office Hours. It is mid-July here in Boston. It's quite hot and humid. I hear that's true everywhere now, so hopefully everyone's doing well enough. We skipped last week because of the holiday. Not last week, 2 weeks ago, but here we are. Announcements. Probably the first announcement is that we declared 591 stable. So yay, we chatted on core. Both Collide and Fleet had it running and testing, and we were probably running about 2 weeks behind. So it's stable now. That's announcements from me. Other announcements? Okay, cool. Next section of the meeting is an open section for people to bring up any questions, issues, or PRs they want to discuss. The intent here is to have a general section for members of the Osquery community to bring something up that they did not feel merited an agenda item. Given that you're all regulars, I kind of doubt we're going to see. Okay. Agenda. I got PRs I'd like people to review.
Yeah, I know you pinged me. I've been away and sick, so just starting my week. So I'll help out. I know the block devices one's pending, and I also kind of want to do it a little bit justice. I'll spin up some digital Ocean VMs and
Cool.
Try to get that done this week.
Thank you. Yeah, there are two PRs there, so it's and they build on each other, so it's a little fuzzy. One that I'd actually love a really quick, even not very reasoned review on is on the website. I started playing with trying to automate some of the website release stuff, and I can't run an action until it's merged to main. So if anyone can just thumb that one.
I think I already did.
Oh, wonderful. Maybe I just didn't notice yet. Yeah, I'll visit that and see if I can get back to making some progress on that. Yes, thank you, Alessandro. Yeah, I'll take a look at that. I started trying to see if I could get GitHub to open PRs on behalf of itself, so we can just automate that little bit of website release work.
Kind of like Dependabot? Maybe.
No.
Or we'll still need to like run the workflow, right?
Yeah. So there's a couple things I don't know yet. The way it stands right now, to update the website, to release our software, what we need to do is we need to run a tool that I wrote in the website repo, which basically fetches some metadata, commits it into JSON. And then that JSON, and then the source code has to get built using Yarn and released to GitHub pages. So I'm starting to look at which parts of that we can automate. If we can automate the downloading and creating a PR with the update, that's progress. We could possibly even put that into, a nightly cron job or an hourly process. I don't know. And then maybe we can also automate releasing it to GitHub pages. I feel like that should be a supported thing. I just don't know enough to know. So I've kind of started to nose around that. But yeah, I don't know yet. So yeah, just kind of starting to play with that. But thank you for the thumb on that, Alessandro. Other stuff people are trying to do?
I am working on the newer endpoint security-based FIM and open events, and I have it's been working great locally, like 0 performance issues.
That's neat.
And I also just realized GitHub released M1 or Apple Silicon image or hosted runner, whatever those are called. I might take a look at having one and adding a workflow there. It's faster, but I think we'll have to like update the SDK to 11, which is Big Sur, which we are on Catalina, I think. And given that Sonoma is coming out, it'll be 4 versions behind. So I think should be okay. I'm trying to make it work with Catalina, but my eyes are bleeding.
I always have to look up the releases and every time.
Catalina is 10.15, which came out in 2018, 2019, maybe
2019.
I don't remember. 2019. Okay.
And Big Sur is an increment of 1. So we're
Yes.
going with Big Sur, which came out in June of 2020. I have no idea. I don't feel like I can think too hard about. Would this drop Catalina support?
Not drop, but it will be best effort basis because there are newer APIs that Apple doesn't backport, and you can weak link them, which is what I've been doing. But even the weak linking is like, we don't test it with older SDKs, so sometimes it works, sometimes it's basically you have to bump up the SDK 1 point ahead to make it work and not crash.
I don't have an opinion today.
Yeah, and kind of tangential to that, this will also bring in line the file paths config that we have on Linux and Windows. So the same can be used for the macOS ones as well.
Nice.
Which wasn't possible before pre-Ventura, but now it will be.
That sounds really cool.
There is one, this is kind of tangent of a tangent. With the macOS FIM capability, it does not need that a path already be present. So it can be like, oh, if a path gets created in the future, it'll still kind of tag along and create an event. But we don't support that. We'll just remove any paths that are not present. So I think that's okay now. We'll revisit it if someone really advocates for it, or
if you can easily, how easy would it be to support that? Because we get questions
I think
about that all the time.
So, and that's the thing, right? Because then you are diverging from the Linux and Windows implementation, and this is in the resolve file glob patterns or resolve file patterns function, which is already kind of big and meaty. But it's not something that I'll like focus. It won't be a priority. It might happen in a separate PR after this or in a follow-up.
I think that's reasonable. Yeah. Other folks doing anything fun? Sounds quiet.
I mean, I think I can mention that on the same line of, well, again, endpoint security, I have an implementation for the socket events table. Obviously, what's available, what macOS make available right now is only events for Unix domain sockets. So it's not like, maybe not necessarily the most interesting one, but at least is, I would say, is a start.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I feel like everyone always wants this kind of stuff. So to the extent that it's easy and reasonable to add, then that's cool.
To do the network extensions thing, we'll have to do a lot more work. We'll have to move the app bundle to /applications and have a system extension kind of way of doing it. Stefano knows about it.
Yeah, well, actually, very partially, I was wondering if they would extend the amount of events that you can gather with just endpoint security or not, or if it's known that in the future they will not, and so you really have to do a network extension. Because,
or I think network-based, I think they keep adding stuff to the network extension, and for like endpoint-based, they keep adding stuff to endpoint security. So every new release brings at least 7 or 8 new events.
Yeah, like what I was wondering was, like, isn't the network extension even a bit too powerful? You can do packet inspection, I guess. Yeah. So I wonder.
Content filtering, packet filtering, exactly.
Yeah, I wonder, will they ever just both connect, bind, listen events in endpoint security for all sockets? Because I think, well, that table wants those kind of events, not anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
I haven't been talking to folks at Apple lately, so I don't even have that. And yeah, like, I know developing that is so much pain and you have to jump through so many hoops. So feel free to like just ping, and I'm happy to kind of bounce ideas or help out.
Yep.
Yeah, there's like someone, Uptix has a weird extension where we're using libpcap for some of this, but I think I don't think we loved that approach. It didn't feel good.
It's a modified libpcap.
Yeah, if I remember their PR though, it was not. It looked like it had potential exploitabilities in it because it was sort of doing gnarly things with untrusted network data. So it didn't feel good. But I feel like needing a network extension would be a big step for us. So I don't know if we really want to go down this route.
We'll also need more entitlements. So in case
we might have them, I forget.
I don't think we have the network one. We have the system extensions work. I cannot see what we have. It's just I just know I have access to one little thing. So
yeah, let me log in. I can't remember what we have either. I can't log in quickly. That's maybe I can. I don't remember. This might be buried behind one of my things. I can't do real fast.
Don't Apple need to provide us a new provisioning profile for that? Because the one we have does not have the entitlement for network extension. So
yeah,
I mean, unless you have a separate file, yeah.
And we basically generate the provisioning profile. Apple just provides like a UI where we take like, this is what we want in the profile, and then we just click it. But I think we only have the endpoint security extension. We do not have system and the network one. But maybe now that we have like a proper entity, we can just request it, have it granted. We don't have to use it.
I mean, we just requested, so we got endpoint security because I requested it.
And we'll have to request these two as well. We'll have to write an essay.
I just don't remember if I did.
I have a copy of the essay I wrote for my personal account. I'm happy to cite those sources and
I feel like this, I'm like not even, this should be somewhere obvious. Where does it even show me what my entitlements are? Oh, maybe I probably
You'll
have
need to
log in as
create
the
a
account
new
owner.
app ID, and then it'll show what capabilities you have.
Yeah, the problem is I'm not logged in as the account owner because that's hiding under something else. Yeah, I don't think we have network extension right now. I think we only have endpoint security. But we can request it. If this is the thing we need, we can do it. It's not a big deal. So yeah, we'll do it if we need it. No, maybe we should just do it in advance of needing it. Should we request it ahead of time? Like we can just go through that paperwork.
Doesn't hurt. I think it's. I mean, even if we get it and we don't use it, it's not like, right? It's just sitting there.
Okay. If you want to open a foundation issue and chuck the essay you wrote in, I'll modify it and submit it for us. Yeah. Anything people want to talk about? Any other PRs?
I mean, this is a minor one. I just opened because I inadvertently broke the AR64 build for, well, OpenSSL specifically. So yeah, the top PR is going to fix it. So yeah.
This is the, yeah, I'll approve that one and some other. It looks like you've got other ones, and you and I were chatting in some other PR
Yeah.
too, and
The FIPS one, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, haven't forgotten those, just haven't come back to them yet. Oh, and I wanted to thank you, Stefano. You upgraded OpenSSL.
Oh,
it looked easier than you thought maybe, but I was really glad to see the PR go up.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I recall there was. I mean, okay, I dodged a bullet with the API compatibility flag, but so that delays some of the work. But eventually, yeah, that has to be updated, and it means like updating Boost, AWS, and other stuff. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for finding it and for doing it.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that went in. Yeah. Other stuff? People want to talk about anything, or should we just bail out of here early today?
So, yeah, I'll make the question. What do you think? What is the sentiment about having upstream do special builds or one special build specifically for FIPS eventually? So right now we only have we eventually will have that enforce FIPS flags for AWS only. There is, I would say, there is some interest in having that flag actually hard-coded in the binary so that the binary itself comes with FIPS AWS enabled. And I can see similar requests in the future. I can say there is some interest around FIPS in general, FIPS Osquery, which, yeah, there is some additional work to do with around OpenSSL.
I feel mixed, and I don't know. I feel like I want to hear from more people and think about what does this entail. Most of the people in the security space that I know do not like FIPS. So, this feels
Yeah.
like I imagine you have a customer that for various reasons is required to use FIPS and is required, and it's easier for them if all of their software is FIPS only because there's probably less auditing overhead around flags and usage.
Yeah.
And the question then for us is, do we Osquery want to release a FIPS build, or do we want to support like a build time FIPS only option? Can they build it themselves?
Yeah, I mean, the flag will exist either way. So, yeah.
Yeah, the PR you have up, I mean, to be honest, I don't love it, but it might be the least bad option. As commented in the PR, it just feels like a real weird.
Yeah, I don't love it too. The problem is AWS SDK that even the very latest version doesn't correctly support FIPS regions. Like you should be able to specify the region by appending FIPS dash, and then it should transform it, but it doesn't do that always. So yeah, we have to outcode stuff.
What would it be like if we had a FIPS only Osquery build? Would we sort of end up like changing what we did in OpenSSL? Do the hashing functions we use in other places have to change?
So yeah, so OpenSSL, we would need to use an older version, because normally FIPS validated version, OpenSSL version are older. Then we have to support, if there is anything to support, but anyway, the FIPS module is like a separate DLL, so there is an exception where now Osquery has to, or OpenSSL itself will dynamically load a DLL with the FIPS module. And then, yeah, I still haven't done work on it. I mean, it depends on AWS, it depends on Boost, how they, well, not Boost, but AWS mainly, how they react, like if they, work correctly or not with it. Currently on Windows and macOS, AWS is not using an OpenSSL as a cryptographic library, so that has to be changed. But otherwise, yeah, it's a bit of a gray area about the hashing, because technically, well, our understanding is that FIPS really wants to limit the usage of any hashing, cryptographic protocol, etc., with communications or anything that has to be secure or has to store something securely. But with hashes, like Osquery doesn't store anything, doesn't do like decryption or encryption, and has to again securely store something. So that part, I don't know. Maybe the only thing is that if a user, like the hash table, if a user decides that MD5 is safe enough to ensure that a file is correct, that may be in some very specific case be a security issue, so they should only be using better hashing to do the tests.
What
So yeah.
Would this affect our curl table?
Well, yeah.
Let me ask what I really mean.
Yeah.
If what FIPS mostly cares about is that you only use FIPS approved ciphers for external communication, then do we need to make a FIPS OS query, or could we make an OS query without AWS and then have people use an AWS plugin that was FIPS compliant?
Well, AWS is something is one case, but also the backend communication with like with the loggers, with FlipVM, for instance, is another case where you would want FIPS validated ciphers. Like
Yeah, and I
TLS.
guess you could make a FIPS compliant plugin to do all of that, but it wouldn't disable it out of core.
Yeah.
So I guess then maybe it's just as much work to make a disable all the things that aren't going to be FIPS compliant as it would to make a FIPS compliant version.
I mean, so disabling, yeah, I see what you mean now. Like, yeah, we don't give support for, like, we don't change the core plugins so that they work with FIPS cipher, but we simply disable them. Yeah. I mean, I would say it's a way we can, it's easier in a sense. It's maybe less preferable for some customer because then you have to develop an extension that gives FIPS functionality. But yeah, I'm putting it out. I understand the upstream view, but yeah.
Are we still in a bad place concerning the updates to these FIP compliant libraries? Like, is OpenSSL now being more frequently updated to be compliant?
So, like, not really. That I think it comes with FIPS, and I think this is what Seth was referring to, like why the security space doesn't like it, because they lag behind and they have CVEs, so it doesn't make sense in many cases. But yeah, no, as far as I know, the validation process is still very long.
Okay, part of what I'm worried about is this update process and the cycle, and it starts triggering these follow-on problems, right? Where if you build it in a FIPS compliant mode, we're going to run into a slew of SNCC and a dependabot and everyone else's alerts being like, "Hey, you're linking against this ugly thing." And my guess is that one way to achieve this would be to use the y'all have a complicated dependency layering system, right? So maybe there's some rudimentary hooks there to change what OpenSSL is in use, but I wonder if we can come at it from the other direction and just say, like, okay, here's OS query, and here's OS query with no cryptography. Make your own, right? And you know, it's like Collide maintains plugins for doing all of the network communication so that we can do it in Go, and it's not that hard, right? And I can imagine that you or even OS query itself is like, okay, here's a plugin that, you know, uses FIPS compliant stuff to generate all the things you expect. Like that feels pretty tractable to do it in whatever language.
I was also wondering a couple of things. Like, first, if you were to use, like, let's say that you have a FIPS compliant Osquery, would you also have to deploy a FIPS compliant Collide, for example? And the second question is, or was, are you automatically FIPS compliant if you use OpenSSL? Or do you need to certify Osquery too? Is this something that people are going to ask for?
No, compliance is like validation is the official thing. And it's, it's basically impossible to get regularly for all the versions, and no one basically is interested into that. So application use FIPS validated libraries, but then they say, thanks to that, they are compliant. So again, compliant means an application that uses only validated libraries, but it is not itself validated. And yeah, so compliance, there's no one that tells you you are like there's no official body that tells you you are compliant. It's more a transparency thing, meaning again you say, yeah, we only use cryptographic and security stuff here, and now we are using, as you can see, we are using OpenSSL FIPS validated, and so we are compliant. That's it.
I see. And a follow-up question: who is going to be held liable if it turns out that we are not compliant, even though we stated we were? Because
There's no
an early thing that we should cover before we even think about going down that route, I think.
yeah. So I'm for that part, I would say I'm using like common sense. So I'm not a lawyer, which means so yeah, take it with a fist of salt, not just a pinch. Yeah, again, given that compliance, you are saying that you are compliant and there's no certification, I would expect like there is no backfire, not just from your customer and users, basically. You're not making any, how can I say it, like lawful statement.
We don't have contractual relationships with anyone. Like there's no one who we sign, like we don't sign service agreements with anyone. Osquery does not sign a service agreement with anyone. So I wonder what, like I even wonder what our exposure around liability is, right?
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about we now have a page on Osquery.io where we say that we have a FIPS compliant version, but then maybe the statement is not really true.
I understand, but I don't know that, you know, we also say, oh man, I can't remember if, like, don't we say ask any question or something?
Yeah.
I mean, clearly that's not wholly true, right?
Yeah, that's true.
We say we're performant and occasionally we're non-performant. But I mean, I understand FIPS has a stricter definition, so I don't know what we would say. But since we're not signing a service agreement, I don't understand enough. I know it's probably a question we should ask our lawyers if we go down this route. I feel like there's just this big question here that I don't know the answer to around. It feels really ugly to pull in an old OpenSSL library. And I just wonder if we would do better to make it easy for people to build what they need themselves. You know, I wonder a little bit too about follow-on effects, right? Because we use the OpenSSL library to parse certificates in a bunch of places. And, you know, if we mandate that library get downgraded, what else breaks? Or maybe it's not even possible to build an Osquery without OpenSSL, given that we lose so much certificate parsing. So, could we even build an Osquery no crypto?
Well, I mean, sort of. You would lose a couple of tables and definitely any external communication, because, like, or at least on Linux, because you can use the system APIs on Windows and macOS. Like OpenSSL is the system API on Linux. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that just sounds hard here is this sounds like it would be a shift away from our mostly static binary to being a much more dynamic binary.
Yeah, I mean, we already on Windows and macOS, we already technically dynamically load libraries or private frameworks to do some of the work. So yeah, OpenSSL is itself compiled statically, but then it has to dynamically load an external module where the FIPS interface is placed.
Yeah. I guess I imagine three. So if there's a customer that really wants Osquery in a FIPS compliant environment, I hear three possible routes. One of them is that they just do all the work themselves, right? And one of them is that maybe we distribute. Okay, so I guess we could distribute an Osquery FIPS thing, right? Which is going to have a bunch of modifications to the build and link process. We could distribute Osquery as we do, and they could build it themselves. So maybe we make it easier to change up the Osquery, the OpenSSL it links to. Or similarly, we could provide a Osquery no crypto or something like that, and then they can either use that or build that and then build an extension based that does their network layer. Like, what's a good choice?
Yeah. So, yeah, I to be fair, even though I have to had to ask, but yeah, I don't like too much for upstream to, and in general, to have to support FIPS builds. But anyway, yes, that's the first solution. Another one, actually, I forgot. At least if the issue is only with external communications, so backends like FlipDN, one could maybe do the same as AWS is doing. So you don't change what the client, like the library in the client, but you change the servers so that they only accept compliant ciphers, protocol ciphers, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But even there, I'm not sure. It depends. Yeah, I'm kind of waiting for at least this customer to know if that's enough for them or if they do need something more. I mean, again, as I said, I think full compliance, maybe specifically again for these hashes, which you can, again, depends on the context, you might need to have compliant ciphers only there. So that's like a possible second solution, though. The third one, as I said, external implementation. So the issue there, I think it's a bit of performance. So if we are going to implement the whole plugin that then which needs networking, then okay, I guess, meaning like loggers, the configure fresh plugin, and then the question maybe also tables, like if you want the curl table, because otherwise if you instead want to have the extension itself that only does the cryptography, I mean, depending, like that, there's a lot of communication. I can see performance issues.
I mean, I don't know, because I don't know what the utilization is, right? I think that I don't know that running all the TLS stuff over an extension is particularly non-performant. Like, we definitely see some weirdness on the thrift socket, but none of that is like super fast, I guess is what I'm saying, right? Like, I don't know that I would run 1,000 logs per second over the thrift socket, but I don't know that the person you're talking to has that need.
I mean, more than that, it would be. I mean, okay, yeah, you would still have to implement basically the HTTP client in the in the extension. Yeah,
but I mean,
the basic HTTP client. Yeah,
I've done that 3 times in different languages. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine it's that hard in whatever, right? Like, pick the language of your choosing and do it in FIP stuff. So I think the things that get harder are like, how much do we have to excise out of Osquery, right? Like, would even just writing an extension that says, okay, here's a FIPS compliant logger, right? Do you, like, don't use the stock logger, use the one in the extension. Or like, how far does that get them?
I mean, a couple of steps, but I think the question then is again, what if the end user doesn't configure Osquery? So, yeah, ideally, we would need to also have like a build with no, as you were saying, like no crypto first.
I mean, you pull on this thread too much, and you get to the point of what if the user installs the wrong OS query?
Well, I mean, yeah, that at that point, well, you have more controls there. I would expect, like checking the version, but yeah.
So I think my guess, and don't take this as authoritative, but my guess is that we don't want to distribute a FIPS binary. I think it's probably just, it incurs all kinds of weird stuff. But I think we probably wouldn't mind creating a FIPS build option, right? Like, so it's like attention. I don't know, like you'd be the one doing that work. And I think we'd probably rather find ways of disabling what they need and making them do it in an extension, right? Because, you can disable tables, right? And I think we could probably, I don't remember if we support disabling them at build time, but we could. So like disabling the TLS system at build time doesn't sound like crazy to me. Maybe we don't distribute that, but I could totally imagine a build option of like, no TLS. It doesn't sound wrong. It feels a lot harder if we talk about needing to rip out OpenSSL and like not having the certificates table and like various internal hashing functions, but maybe that doesn't matter, right? Maybe it's really just, no, we only care about the Osquery TLS communication. We don't care about the curl table or the certificates table. So I don't know. I'm not talking to anyone.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, I'm not sure even there if we can leave OpenSSL in, but just remove any uses that are against FIPS, or completely remove it. I'm also thinking that, like, given that you would have to remove AWS, it would be nice to be able to easily move the AWS code from being a core thing to an extension. So like code reuse basically instead of, because that will be another thing that one has to re-implement as an extension. So
yeah. So I don't know. I think you got to talk to whoever you're.
Yeah, no, but this is helpful. Those are good ideas. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I hope it's fruitful. Other stuff? Marcos, you got anything?
Hello, guys. Not for now. I don't have anything to discuss.
Okay. Well, I say we cut out of here about 10 minutes early then. So
Great.
nice to see everyone. Enjoy the rest of your July.
Same. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, guys.
Thanks all.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.